to Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thank you everyone for joining. All right, it's come that time. We're about to talk about overcoming the monsters in our lives. And I'm so excited to welcome you, L.Y, to the Glow Up Gyrl podcast.
I am so excited to be here because when we get into it, Kyra, and we start talking about monsters, for these next few minutes or however long you'll be tuning in, we're going to be keeping it real about it. We all got monsters, right?
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Everything, yes. And the ones that, we're going to be walking through, like everybody deals with it. So this is just the time, everyone, to listen, take it in, evaluate. That's how I plan to approach this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I'll be the guinea pig. And
we might go deep with you with some monsters. I want to get behind that closed closet door, that darkness. Mm-hmm. Of what is your monster, right? Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing, Kyra. When we give each other permission to be real, to be honest, to be unapologetic about what is really happening in our lives, that we are not perfect. God didn't make us perfect to begin with.
Right.
And more importantly, that what is real is honest and true and vulnerable. And it is okay to just live it and learn from it. I say in my third book, which is Don't Look at the Monster, and I'll tell you how that whole monster concept became to be for me. The subtitle of my book is One Woman's Journey to Live a Purposeful Life, the Gifts, the Lessons, or the Blessings. So everything is a gift, a lesson, or a blessing.
Yes.
Even our monsters.
Yes, I agree with you. All right, so you're giving me chill bumps over here. So let's start out. Why don't you tell the audience about you and what you do?
Okay, yes. Who is L.Y? That weird, initial name that I adopted, right? So I was a executive in corporate America. I had come from growing up. I grew up in the projects, in poverty, in a family of 5 generations of domestic violence. I was a victim of domestic violence. I was a teen mom. I had my daughter at 17. And it would come to be learned that would be the only child I would ever have. And I was in this very abusive relationship with my first boyfriend. And as that child grew inside of me, my will to survive grew because it was going to be my only child. And he was beating me all the time. And I was afraid that he was going to not only kill me, but potentially my child. And this was after also coming from a legacy of my grandmother, my mother, and now here I was. And so I would go on to get out of that relationship. Actually, it was because he would go to prison. Thank God. That saved my life. And I would go to school, Kyra, for 16 years at night. And this was before online education was a thing. 16 years at night to earn 3 degrees. And those 16 years would embolden me. But I was not only going to shatter the glass ceiling, I was going to create my own ceiling. And I would go on and become an executive in corporate America. And I was working 80 hours a week, like some of us do when we're trying to show up and be what society tells us to be, to live that American dream. I was living in a, $500,000 home, driving a Lexus, had money in the bank, doing all those things, but I was not fulfilled because I was working around the clock. And I remember I went to my doctor. His name was Dr. Lee, a Chinese doctor. And I wasn't feeling well, but when I had gone to him, I also discovered a lump in my breast. And I went to him and I said, Dr. Lee, I'm not feeling well. And oh, by the way, I think I have a lump. And Dr. Lee sent me off to get a battery of tests. And about 10 days later, I came back and he said something to me, Kyra, that ultimately changed the course of my life. He said, you do have a lump, but it's not the lump that's killing you right now. It's all these other ailments, which were triggered from chronic stress of trying to live that American dream and that drive that Lexus and do all that was costing me so much time and energy and my health and wellness. And he said to me, change your life or change your life expectancy. And I came home that weekend, that was a Friday. And I got real still, Kyra. I got real still to really connect into what was I passionate about. And this was before passion and purpose became a thing. I'm talking in the 90s. And I thought about it and I said, you know what I'm passionate about? I want to write. I've always been writing since I was a little girl. I used to write poetry. And so I am going to write. And so I stepped down from that big job in corporate America and I was working part-time and I started writing my first book. And somebody said, write what you know. And what do we know? We know our stories. So I started writing my story about the 4 generations of women in my family that suffered and survived over 60 plus years of domestic violence. My grandmother, my mother, myself, and my daughter. And then years later, my daughter would become involved in this very abusive relationship. Now she has a little girl named Promise, and this person tried to kill her for the second time while Promise lay on the bed beside her, 6 months old. And I would eventually walk away from now corporate America and launch a national organization called Saving Promise. And Saving Promise would become my way of giving back and trying to literally save Promise. But in that journey of trying to save Promise and build this organization, I had another change your life or change your life expectancy moment. And I was on my way from New York City one night back to DC where I live. And I was back at that place again where I'm now a different purpose. You know, I'm not working for somebody else. I'm working for myself now. And I'm trying to do something to change something, this legacy in my family. But now that was killing me. And I had another moment. And I remember reaching down in my purse and grabbing my cell phone because my mother had just passed. I was going through a divorce. I was emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually bankrupt. And the last words my mother said to me, and my mother was an old-fashioned Southern mother. It was that kind of mama who they don't tell you they love you, they show you they love you, right? They show you by having a roof over your head and all that. So her last words to me was that she loved me and whatever I do, never give up on Saving Promise. But I was ready to give up because I was dealing with so many challenges. And so I called my daughter because I wanted to live up to what my mother's expectations, her last words to me before she passed. Don't give up on Saving Promise. And I called my daughter and my daughter got used to me being in this space of pain and agony and grief. And so she answered the phone. As soon as she heard me, she knew I was having one of those breakdown moments. And she said, Mom, hold on. And she put Promise on the phone. Now here was Promise, 3 years old. Promise gets on the phone and she says to me, she calls me Bumblebee and she says, are you crying? And I said, yes, baby, I'm crying. And she says something to me that me and my daughter used to tell her when she discovered she was afraid of the dark. She called them monsters. So we would tell her, just close your eyes real tight and just don't look at the monsters. Now here I was needing her comfort. And she said, but Bumblebee, just don't look at the monsters.
No.
And that will become the title of my third book. And monsters are fear, worry, doubt, regret. And when I wrote that book, I brought the monsters to life. So I didn't say I have fear or I have worry, but fear was a character, worry was a character, doubt was a character, just as they become characters in our lives.
Woo. that was man, that's a story. Yeah, and you're definitely, that's why you're such an inspiration. I mean, you have gone, you've lived almost like so many lives, and you've gone through so much and come out on the other end, the other side of it, such a strong woman, and still, you know, helping other people. Like you still just, but that's like who you are, and that's I admire that. I'm so like, oh. And then to your grandbaby to say that, to give you that message back was just, that's amazing.
Oh my goodness, yes. Just don't look at the monsters. A 3-year-old, a
Wow.
3-year-old, right? And
Yes.
so what I want to say in our conversation today is don't look at the monster, meaning acknowledge it, recognize it for what it's worth, but don't wallow in it. That's what
Yeah.
that 3-year-old was saying to me. Stop
Mhm.
wallowing it. Stop looking up under that bed, like when me and my daughter used to say to her,
Yeah.
just don't look at the monsters, right? Because she
Mhm.
said, monsters, they're under my bed. Well, don't go under there and look at them, right?
Exactly.
Don't wallow. Fear is a prominent monster in our lives. Worry,
Mhm.
doubt, regret, grief, shame, right?
Mhm.
What is your biggest monster today?
I'd probably say it's sometimes it's regret,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say like those two are probably like the ones as I get older,
Mm-hmm.
because as you know, obviously as we get older and you are like, wait, did I make all the right decisions? Did I do all the right things? Should
Mm-hmm.
I have done this? So it's like regret, that always sort of creeps in to say, well, maybe if you had taken this route, then you'd be here today. And
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to just say like, no, like the path that I have to remind myself that where I am is where God intends for me to be.
Yes,
Like this is
absolutely.
this is where I'm supposed to be right now. But I would be lying if I didn't say that it didn't creep in. Like it does, it does. There are moments that it comes in, like I will probably say, like, for personally, like my husband and I, we don't have children. And it just was never, I mean, it was just one of those things where like I didn't grow up in that sense of like, oh yeah, I gotta get married by this age, you gotta have kids, like I was just sort of like, I'm just gonna live life and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think up until probably before I turned 40,
Mm-hmm.
I found out that I had like fibroids.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like when I had to have a myomectomy, and when they like finished, I had like actually like 19 of them. And then it was like I was 6 months, my uterus was like I was 6 months pregnant.
With fibroids.
And so yes.
Oh,
And
oh my
so
goodness.
I remember the doctor telling me when she was looking at the ultrasound, and this wasn't my regular doctor, so the bedside manner of this doctor was not great. And I was just like, who says this to someone? She's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah. She's like, I mean, yeah, she's like, girl, you like have so many. She's like, if you were pregnant, you probably had a miscarriage and didn't know it. And I was just like, who says
Who
that
said
to
that? That
somebody?
was so incompassionate and unprofessional,
Yes. So
right?
it
But
wasn't.
was that a moment for you, despite her ignorance? Was that a moment for you that was transformative in um, acknowledging that these I'm familiar with fibroid um, tumors. They call them tumors because they can become,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
depends on the type that you have. They can become cancerous.
Mhm.
But was that a moment of transformation or transgression for you?
You know, I think in that moment I was annoyed, that she said it. And then when I walked away and got like home later that day and had time to think about it, it did, for me there was a moment where I was just like, oh my God, like what if I, had been pregnant and didn't know it, and then
Right.
a child didn't survive. So it made me a little sad to think about. But then, and once I, like you said, I am one of those people like, yeah, I let it have its moment and I acknowledge that it's there. But then, I said, you know what? But at the end of the day, like, I know the God I serve.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
if I was supposed to have that baby
mm-hmm.
and a baby was supposed to come out of this, like the baby would be here.
The
So,
baby being, if it is intended, if it is
yes.
God's grace and
Yep.
God's will, right?
Yes.
And that's why I said everything is a gift, a lesson, or a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's this book that I read years ago that you may have heard of. It's called The Alchemist. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about this little boy. I think his name is Santiago, and he goes on this journey to find his treasure. the whole notion of the book is that God and the universe will conspire to make life happen and get you on the journey, on the path that you need to be on. So God would even use our master, right? Maybe in that moment, your master might have been, pain or regret or whatever it could have been, right? It doesn't mean that God uses hardship to teach us a lesson or give us a blessing or make it serve as a gift, but it could be something to navigate us to where we're supposed to be, right? Yeah. This is not where you're supposed to be. And so what I love to tell women is, girl, don't look at your master, but acknowledge it. Ask yourself, what is this here to teach me? Is this a gift? And sometimes a gift isn't always bow wrapped, right? Right. A gift is not always bow wrapped. If you are in a relationship and that person is trying to walk out of your life, let him or her go, right? Especially if it's toxic. So you might be like, I know I've been in relationships in the past where I'm like grabbing a person by their ankles, don't leave, oh please, we can make it work, right? In that moment, you don't acknowledge it because the pain and the suffering and all those things are there, right? Right. But in hindsight, it's like, thank God that was a gift that person walked out of my life. That was exactly. A gift that job laid me off, because right now I can finally launch that business. I can finally pursue that book I wanted to write. Yeah, I can finally live that dream that I've always, right? Yeah, I got to figure out how to pay the mortgage or the rent. I got to figure out how to feed my children and myself. You're going to have to figure that out regardless if that job laid you off. Because you said something before we started recording, Kara. You said no day is promised. And I think if COVID has taught us anything, and I like to believe, now I'm a person of faith, right? I like to believe that's God's wrath. That was God's wrath that showed us that any moment I can stop the world. Yes. Right? I can stop the world. Because it didn't just happen in the States. It didn't just happen in Europe. It didn't happen in just Asia. It didn't just happen in Australia. And I'm talking about the continents. The one thing I learned in middle school is the 7 continents. I can name the other 3, right? It happened in the world. Yes. The world was accosted by COVID, right? Yes. Yeah. So if you are in a place in your life where you are dealing with whatever your monster is, and you don't take this time to say, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be doing in my life right now? What am I supposed to change? What is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning? What is the gift, right? Maybe you're in a toxic relationship or marriage that you've been going on for 20 years, right? Maybe you're in a job that you can't even stand to get up and look at your screen anymore. Even first of all, you couldn't stand to get in the car and go commute. Right. And now you like, I gotta look at the screen again today at these folks, right? Maybe you are living, you're tired of just waking up doing the same thing with the same, attitude. Maybe you need to change your perspective, whatever it could be. Yes. If COVID hasn't taught us that no day is promised and that you finally need to make a decision to shift, right? It don't even have to be a life transforming change. It's just, yes. Oh my God. Yes. To all those things, because I
Oh my gosh, yes. I talked about this for like a whole year with everybody who would listen to me. I'm like, oh my God. First of all, I will say, even back as early as December of 2019, I
Mhm,
started to notice. I mean, I live in Atlanta,
mhm.
and we were getting so much rain like in December. And it was just, I was like, gosh, like it just doesn't rain like this all the time. Like,
Mhm.
not in December. I mean, my goodness. And I remember telling one of my coworkers, I was like, it's God's tears. Like, I mean, he tired of us. I was like, he
Yes,
is tired. Like, he is
he's
tired.
fired.
I was like, he over here crying because I said, because the world is trash. I was like, people are trash. Like, everybody right now is trash and needs to have like a moment to like step back and like look at yourself. Like, that's what I said. And then the
Absolutely.
next
And
thing,
look how God made us look at ourselves, right?
right? Yeah.
We're all in masks. All you can see is eyes right now,
Mhm.
right? But we're in the recovery now. Now people
Yeah.
taking off the mask and all this. But before, right?
Right. Yeah.
You had to you had to envision a smile, right?
Mm-hmm.
He made us go deeper into it
Mm-hmm.
because now it's like you can't look at other people and blame them for your problems.
Exactly. Yes. And on all levels. I mean, you had the people, because I mean, like I have a corporate job in my other life. And I just remember there were people like at the height of the outbreak when people were like, the numbers were sky high. People, I mean, when can we come back to the office and da 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 da? I'm like, do you hate your family that much? Like, I mean, you can't stand being with yourself. Like, for me, it was this has been like the best. I mean, it has definitely been. Of course, I hate all the life that has been taken due
Mm-hmm.
to COVID, but at the same time, it gave me my life back because I was working all around the clocks in the office from 7 o'clock till 7 and 8 o'clock at night. And then I would come
Yeah.
home and see my husband and my dog and just cook, eat, and then, and then I was
And
just
then go
back
to,
in
yeah,
the
that
same.
cycle. That cycle.
And
Absolutely.
and so I'm like, oh my God, like to be able to like be home, to spend time with them, to not feel the pressures of the world, to have to go out and do stuff and be
Yes.
places. And like, oh yeah, I gotta all these things that you were doing. But for me personally, like I remember somebody saying, like, I'm like, yeah, like I haven't seen a hairdresser in a year in like, in 7 months. I haven't seen I've been personally over here trying to do my own eyebrows. My nail, like I used to, I mean, my nails, like I've been between like the press-ons nails and all that. I'm doing my own pedicures. And I just, I said like, it's just one of those things where it's like a reflection point to like what,
Where you do your inner reflection.
yes, like what
Be
matters to you.
still and know that I am God. God stilled us to face your monsters, to
Mm-hmm.
face those things that you're struggling with, to
Yeah.
give you that quiet time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Yeah.
force you to spend time with your family
Yes, and yourself. But
and
people
yourself.
there
Yes.
were still so many people that just couldn't do that. Like, it was sort of hard. People don't understand it. But for me personally, I heard from God and my prayers that I just had to sacrifice. So this was going to be the sacrifice for me, is that I wasn't going to see my family. I mean, I didn't see my family that entire anytime in 2020. And
Mhm.
2021 was the first time I saw like my dad and then my sister. And like I'm going to see my mom for the first time like later on in July. And so people were like, well, oh, I mean, if you guys aren't going anywhere, I mean, you could go see her. And I said, but you know what? But God has spoke, like I don't expect you to understand it because he didn't tell you.
Mhm.
But he told me and
Mhm.
he told my mom, and we talked about that. And and I said, like, it won't last forever. I remember like thinking this one thing. I'm like, my God, like anybody who's a believer, I'm like, God gave up his son. Like he let Jesus sacrifice his life for us. And
Yeah.
all he did was ask us to stay in the house for 2 weeks in the beginning. Just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just stay home. Stay home. Like, don't go work at your house. Like, don't go out. But we couldn't do that because, oh my God, I'm missing out. I need to go out and eat with my friends. The movies, I miss everything. We're being held captive. And I was like, I don't think you know what being held captive really is like when you sitting here with an air conditioner and cable and internet and you get to just like freewheel it around your house. So it was a really hard time because I was angry a lot because I was just angry at people for not being able to see the gift that had been given to us.
Absolutely. An opportunity and a gift. I love the way it was a gift. And just notwithstanding the tragedies of the lives that were lost, the families that were broken apart. You know, for example, what my organization outside of my work as empowering women, Saving Promise, domestic violence has exasperated, right? Because people now are cohabitating and triggering, and it's triggering other kinds of behaviors, right?
Right.
Notwithstanding those things that we know to be true and tragic, that's not what we're saying here.
Right.
We're not saying that is the gift. What we are saying is that the gift is an opportunity when God says, be still and know that I am God. Be still. And being still meant taking that time to reflect, taking that time to practice gratitude, taking that time to say, you know what, instead of trying to be out with my friends and this and that, let me be with myself. Let me do some inner work. Let me confront my monsters. Let me clean up all this toxic craziness in my life. Let me come up with a plan. Let me pursue that dream I had.
Yes.
Because if you come out on the other side of this and you in the same place doing the same thing with the same folk, with the same ideas, if you are same, then shame on you.
Oh my, I feel like you are just reading my mind and saying like I was like, you don't want to come out on the other side of this and still be
on the other side.
The same person that you were, because there's no way, there's literally no way we could go through what we went through last year and just jump back into
and just pick up where we left off.
Yep. Nope.
Pick up where we left off.
It's very hard. Like you said, for me personally, I mean, like, I'm just like, I was able to start Glow Up Girl. I was able to start this podcast. I was able to connect to people that I would not have met, because if I was sitting in an office all day long, I would not have had the opportunities. But on the other side of that, now for me, there are just certain things now I know, I'm like, you know what? I can do my job
absolutely
from my home and be effective and productive. So guess what? I'm not going to come back into your office 5 days a week. Yeah, I'm not. And it's funny because it's sort of like the running joke on our team. My boss is like, well, we know Kyra's not coming back. I was like, as long as y'all know, like, that's as long as we good and we have this understanding, I'm cool with that. And y'all can joke all you want. I said, but no, I just know that there are certain things that I will not stand for right now. I'm not going to stand for, jumping through your hoop and doing this, especially if I don't feel safe in a certain situation. Like, that's not okay.
And you know what, Kyra? That was your shift. When I talk about this is an opportunity to shift, right? And a shift doesn't have to be massive, right?
Right.
You had the courage to confront your monsters and to make a decision, right? To shift. Shifts can be small. Like, some people they can't leave that job, right? They got bills to pay. We all got bills to pay. Life, the thing that will be the same when COVID is beyond us is that mortgage is going to be there. It might have been put on hold for a little while.
But it's still there.
It's still there. Now, instead of owing 30 years on your mortgage, you owe 35 years, right? So it's still those things are the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to change, right?
Right.
But what can change, or what could have changed that shift, is that when COVID is beyond us, I now have moved into where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not worried about the 35-year-old mortgage because I created a way
Mm-hmm.
for me to be able to take care of that and some.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's not always about there are different areas of our lives. I call it my 4 P's,
Okay.
right? One of them is, I said, in anything you want to build, whether or not it's a business, whether or not it's yourself,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not is you want to build a house, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 4 P's are, the first one is personal. You need to get your personal self in order. And what I mean by personal, that's your emotional, your
Mm-hmm.
physical. You got to start taking self-care, your spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your
Yeah.
emotional, physical, spiritual. If you were unhealthy before COVID in terms of not doing what you need to do to make sure you take care of self-care, your health, or whatever, you had an opportunity now, even if you had an excuse before, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You now you could have been in your home and
Mm-hmm.
got online, and there are apps out there where you can do something in 7 minutes a day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So personal. The next one is your professional,
Mm-hmm.
meaning what skill do I need to develop? If you want to launch a business, what professional development do I need? If I want to write a book, there are all kinds of, YouTube videos and
Mm-hmm.
Skillshare. You can pay $10 to learn any skill you want at
Mm-hmm.
Skillshare. So what professional, if you want to be a public speaker, if you want to be an empowerment speaker, or you want to launch a platform like Glow Up Girl, right? You probably didn't know how to do it. There's so much out there, no excuse not to do it. There are all kinds of webinars. I do webinar.
Mm-hmm.
I did a webinar last week called How to Launch Your Online Business and Create Financial Freedom. And in that, I shared 30 of the top online businesses that are in demand right now. And they don't have to be anything that you have to have a skill set in, right? It could
Mm-hmm.
be something you know how to already do.
Mm-hmm.
So professional. The third is plan.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your plan? So you got your personal, you got your professional. What is your plan?
Right.
How are you going to execute your vision?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to build that home? What are the things you need to build that home? What are the bricks and the mortar and the stones you need to buy?
Mm-hmm.
If it's that business, what are the small steps I need to take? I say everybody should commit 15 minutes. It takes only 15 minutes a day to invest in your vision, whatever that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's you want to write a book, start a business, launch a podcast, whatever it is. Take
Right.
15 minutes a day and say, let me learn about what are the platforms I need to be able to launch my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do I get guests? 15 minutes a day. So what is your plan? And finally, the 4 P, and I don't know why people act like it's taboo to talk about it, but it's the money,
Mm-hmm.
right? The profit,
Mm-hmm.
And profit can come in by way of, let's say you're a pastor, a church is a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to raise the money to build that church?
Right.
So profit don't always mean, well, how am I going to get the next money I need to buy the Gucci bag?
Right. Yeah.
Right? How am I going to continue to work this job and do this 15 minutes a day
Mm-hmm.
and pay for this class I got to take?
Exactly.
So profit means, how am I going to have the financial resources? How am I going to become financially free so I can let that job go? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
4 P's: personal development, professional development, having a plan, and the profit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's where your mind needs to be. And it don't always have to be around a business or writing a book or starting a podcast. It could be about
Yes.
self-development.
Yes. Yes. That's
The profit for self is, how do I get to ultimate health,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do I get the money to buy that treadmill?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get the money to join that gym? How do I get the money to go to that, to participate in that yoga class that costs $30 a week?
Right.
Or buy that bike that I wanna run my next marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And when you wrap all that up, what are the things I need to do to create that shift, like confront my monsters, like fear?
Mm-hmm.
What is fear telling you you can't do? What is doubt keeping you from doing what you need to do? What are you worried about? Worry,
Right.
shut up.
Yes. And yes, you're right. Because I mean, even as you were talking through that, you get fear. You can't buy that Peloton bike, or you don't have enough money to go to that yoga class.
That's the
And
self.
then the doubt, well, come on, you're not going to do it. It's not like you're going to do it all the time. Seriously, are you going to really take the...
So you're going to take the money that you need to pay your mortgage and buy a Peloton? That is selfish, girl.
But I
will get up in your head.
And I feel like, they probably were running rampant during last year, all these monsters, the fear, the doubt, especially for anybody, when I was starting Glow Up Girl, oh my God, when I was starting the podcast, I heard, my whole business was sort of founded on God telling me here and Holy Spirit say, glow up, and me looking around going, what? Me? And when the podcast was going to start, when I started the podcast, I never had a plan to start a podcast, like ever. And I heard the words, nope, start a podcast, Kyra. It was very clear to me. But I let the monster of doubt say, she was like, girl, don't nobody want to hear from you. What you guys talk about? And then I was like, you might be right.
And now that you invited me on your podcast, it was like, oh, we're busy. We're booked all the way out. Can you do it on this day? This is the only day you can do it, because this is the only time we have. Because it's in demand.
And I said, and I said that, but I acknowledged it, and I let it have its place. But I wasn't gonna let it have a residence. And I said, you know what? I must really need to do this, because you wouldn't be working so hard to make me feel like I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So just, I got my plan together, and then I just went into action, because I feel like if he leads me to it, I just need to do it.
Yes, you need to do it. You need to do it. That is the message for the day.
Yes. Now, when we think about the monsters, which ones often show up for women, would you say?
The three most common ones: fear, worry, and doubt. And the interesting thing is they all conspire. First, fear triggers worry, right? Because you start to worry about, am I going to fail? Can I do this? Who wants to hear from me? Right. What do I have to say? Right?
Right.
Then you start losing sleep, like, oh my goodness, maybe I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. And then doubt is on the other end saying, no, you shouldn't do it. Nobody wants to hear from you, girl.
Yeah. Yes.
Girl, what you got to say? My own sister don't even like to talk to you. Right?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny, because
fear, worry, doubt, and then all those other things triggered after that. Regret, because then you don't do it, you start to regret.
Right.
And shame, and you feel ashamed, and and anxiety. Then anxiety shows up. Anxiety is all crazy, like right?
Yes, got you running like a chicken with head cut off.
Head off, out there, and then you create more anxiety. But yeah, those are the most three common. And one of the things that that I am on a mission to do is bringing the monsters to life. I want people to be able to talk to monsters. So I was in New York City a few years ago, and I went out to a happy hour, and I was sitting next to this woman. And in New York City, everybody's just from all around the world, so you always know where you're from and why you in the Big Apple, right?
Right.
And so she said, I'm here, I'm doing a show on Broadway, and I was trying to figure out how to bring the monsters to life. And because I do a lot of workshops, empowerment workshops and everything, and I have designs of the monsters and stuff, and I would bring them up like on the screen, but I needed fear. I needed somebody to be able to talk to fear. I wanted them to confront their fear. I wanted them to confront their worry. I want them to confront doubt. And so when I was talking to this person, I said, so what brings you to the big city? And she said, well, I'm here doing a show on Broadway. And I said, oh, really? What kind of show are you doing? She started saying about puppets. She's a puppeteer, and I'm doing a show with puppets. And I remember having a Oprah moment. That is it. I can use puppets to bring the monsters to life.
Yes.
So I am now launching a new podcast and platform and YouTube channel called Monster Chicks and Skits. And the chicks are me and the monsters. And the skits are us. Really, the purpose of it is to make women look at ourselves, at our monsters, in a funny, comical way, but in a way that also reaches us.
Right.
Using the art of storytelling and the art of comedy and the art of character and puppets and imagery.
Yes. I love that.
Yes. So I'm going to come back to Glow Up Gyrl.
Yes.
Eventually with my chicks. You're going to get to talk to fear and worry and doubt and hear them tell you why they do what they do.
Yes. Because that, I think a lot of people would like to know why they do what they do.
Yes. Now, let me ask you this question. Are you hearing, and this is, I'm real, so I'm always talking about what's really happening around me right now. So I live right outside of DC. And right now there is a massive storm about to start. Do you hear the thundering yet?
You know what? I heard a slight rumble a few seconds ago. Yeah. And yeah, I did. I heard that.
Yeah. So listen to that rumble, because that is the rumble. That's the roar. Remember that song that used to come out? I think Katy Perry said, "Hear me roar," right? Roar. Listen to that roar, as today's episode and podcast is about allowing this roar to speak to you, to finally confront your monsters and have that shift.
Yes.